Hey, how's it going? The topic I'm going to hit today came out of the video I made yesterday. I said if you guys wanted to hear about it, to let me know, and some people did. And basically, it's about ruminating the crash and how to deal with what I call the inevitable fall from that. I'm going to go ahead and just pull up these notes, and I'll kind of go through this, and hopefully it'll all make sense. So here's the first thing I just want to say on this. The progress that you make on this is incredibly slow, painfully slow. I used to, in my earlier videos, I would talk about these little micro improvements, because oftentimes when you're going through this, it is so freaking slow that you don't even notice the progress. I've had times working with folks on this where I've been able to point that out to them because they feel like they're not making progress. But in working with them over weeks, months, I can point out, and I'm like, well, remember how you were here and how you're here, this at these various stages, there are improvements. So first, let me just kind of go back up. So I kind of break this out into phases, and you've heard me talk about this before, and I'm talking about percentages. Like, initially 100% of your time is ruminating and thinking and focusing about the ex and the situation and how crappy it is. And you slowly progress from 100% on them, 0% on you. 75% on them, 25% on you. That first phase, that 100% to like 75%, is incredibly painful. So that's the part where you can't even really recognize it. Realistically, when I say 100 to 75 to 50, I mean, I'm shortening that up, but it's actually more like 100% to like 99, and then 100, and then maybe 97, back to then you're 100, and then the time frame from whenever you completely go into this mindset or this feeling of everything being complete and total crap is vacillating in time. Like for me, when it first started, it's like I would have moments, maybe not seconds, but I would have minutes of time where I'm like, oh, okay, I can kind of see through the fog. And then immediately I would go back into this painful mode of ruminating and just being stuck in this nightmare. That first little bit, incredibly slow, incredibly painful. But what ends up happening is once you start recognizing that you are getting better, that things are improving, it starts to build on itself. Meaning that when you're like, oh, wow, I'm implementing these techniques. And remember, or just to throw this out there, a lot of these, all these techniques, I had to make them up on my own. There wasn't a lot of good information, especially for men dealing with this, other than just suck it up, buttercup, that whole thing. And this was an iterative process I was going through, trying to make sense of all this and trying to effectively, get my life back. But let me go back over here. When I started recognizing improvements, it started to get better faster, right? Like, so when you get to that 75% mark, from 75 to 50 goes pretty quick. But here is where things get a little complicated, very complicated, is you get overconfident. You feel like, okay, I got this all figured out. They can't affect me anymore. I got it figured out. The danger with that is what ends up happening is you've implemented, let me try that again. You've implemented like no contact. You think you understand them. You think they're not going to adapt. They're going to continue down on their same little crazy effing path. And you feel like you have it all figured out. But here's the thing. This gets into this. I don't know if my little mouse will move. Oh, it does move. Okay. You get overconfident. You feel like, I got this. That's the way I felt. I'm like, I got this. I got this all figured out. But then something happens. And what I mean by that is these people adapt. They morph. They try new things. They're constantly looking for a way to suck you back in, to draw you into the chaos. Now, the thing to remember on this is this also can happen. Let me pull this slide back up. This can also happen on this point with this. On this overconfident phase, it can also be some other external thing that triggers you and pulls you back in the time. I hate using the trigger thing because it's been so used, but it's more like a PTSD response. Something happens that draws you back into like the 100% of everything being crap. When that happens, and I say in here, feels like all progress lost, dark times, dangerous times. And I mean that. This in my mind is the most dangerous time. This is why I mention this a lot. And if I'm working with somebody, I will introduce this concept to them on a regular basis because I want you to understand that this happens, that this unfortunately is normal, but that it happens. And what happens in this is that you feel like, what you feel like is all your progress is deleted, that all the progress is lost, that this crap feeling is what your reality is, and you actually convince yourself that, going back up on this thing, that this slow progress and things speeding up, that was fake. And the reality is this chaos and nightmare that you're living, that's real. That is why this is a dark time and it's a very dangerous time, because you feel like I'm never going to escape this. I'm never getting away. My life is going to suck and it's only going to get worse. And anytime I feel like it's getting better, it's an illusion that I'm tricking myself to think and believe that this is what's really happening. That was fake. There's no chance of getting better on this. There's no way to overcome this betrayal, this pain, this violation of your soul, if you want to call it that, or however you want to describe it. And I spiraled out of control. The darkest time I've probably ever experienced, because I was convincing myself that I was never going to escape this. It was going to be horrible forever. And, you kind of get to the point where like, what's the point? What's the point? It's never going to get better. I was just tricking myself, right? This part is normal. Let me pull this back up. This part is normal. I think everyone goes through it. And it's one of those things that you have to be aware of it. And I have other videos like the dark days. And I mean, I have so many videos that it's hard to keep track of where all the information is. But that mindset from a narcissistic abuse recovery playlist that I used to talk about is a good primer for it, because it's all these videos that kind of build on as you're going through this, that's slowly taking you through all these different concepts. And a lot of them you're not going to be ready for, right? You'll get the message for the first few, and you're like, okay, that makes sense. And then you don't see this stuff, and then it happens. You're like, oh crap, that's what they were talking about. That's the issue. The reason this is so damn important is because almost everybody goes through this. You start feeling better. You feel like the person doesn't have any control over you. You feel like you've mastered the situation. Something happens. They suck you back in, and you're having a PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder response, where you are pulled back in and you feel it. You taste it. You smell it. The whole 9 yards. I've worked, well, I'm not worked. This isn't what I worked with, but I remember having a conversation with my own father when I was going through my situation. So this is like 30 years past his divorce with my psycho mother. And he would fall right back into almost reliving that experience. Well, not almost, he was from, 30 years in the past. And that's the problem with this, is it pulls you back into that nightmare. However, this is the final bullet on this, is setbacks in my mind are an opportunity to evaluate your progress, or I say on here, to test your progress. And what I mean by that is when you're going through this and you feel like, I got this figured out. I'm good. I've moved past this. I've dealt with it. I've healed from it. When something happens and you go from 25%, let's say you're doing really well, or at least you are in your mind, and you go all the way back to the beginning, that just means you haven't really processed it. You've intellectually put it in a box, threw it under the bed, so to speak, but you haven't actually dealt with it. The way you know you've really healed from this is when a trigger type incident happens. And I hate using that word, but when something happens that would normally drag you back down to ground zero, and it doesn't, and you recognize it, you're like, oh, wow, that used to really bother me, and I don't care anymore. It doesn't affect me. That is part of this slow process. It takes time to get there. And the really sad part is most people are really good about putting things in a box, not really processing it, and ignoring it. And then you get drugged back down. And I did not like it when this happened to me. It was real, like I said, dark days, very bad time, very dangerous time. But fortunately, I was able to work through it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And then you just progress past it. And there are always going to be things that pull you back to childhood trauma and those different type of things. And again, they're not fun. Don't get me wrong. It's not an enjoyable experience. However, it is an opportunity to track your own progress. And when you can start to recognize these incidents that set you down that path, and then you break the pattern interrupt when you start spiraling out of control, and you can stop it and reverse it, then you've dealt with it. So my message on this is, when you're dealing with this, let me pull this back up, when you're ruminating and that crash is happening, and you're dealing with that, what I call inevitable fall, just recognize or try to remember that this happens. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you're broken forever and that it's never going to get better, because I've, used my story as an example. I've been able to progress through it. Especially in the earlier days of the channel, it was a little harder because I didn't have the data points to say, okay, well, this is, other people have implemented this and it's done the same for them. This thing has been around long enough to where now I've been able to see that. I've been able to work with people, work them through their muck, either directly one-on-one, or even just comments in videos and emails and whatnot, to where this is a normal pattern. This is unfortunately something that most of us have to go through. I wish that I could snap my fingers and come up with some scenario or some magic word or something that just makes it to where you don't have to, you're like, oh, okay, I get it, and it's no big deal. And you can just deal with it. The problem is the emotions are so damn powerful that it takes work. So if you are experiencing this, don't give up hope, because follow this stuff and you'll be able to work through it. On the next part about that, if you're new to this and you haven't had something pull you back down, just put it in a mental note in your little noggin that if that happens, remember this video, come back to it and rewatch it so that you can go, oh, okay, all right, this isn't the end of the world. This happens. It sucks, but it just means that, you haven't really processed the emotions and the memory and all of that stuff completely yet. So on that, the last couple of videos, or last one, when I said, if you made it to the end, if you made it this far, put down in the comments, let's call it, put down, I'm going to do the Oregon, put down Oregon, the state of Oregon, just in the comments. So I know you made it to the end, and don't give up hope. There is life after all of this. You can take your life back. Things do get better, and you will get there as well. And on that, if you have a topic you want me to cover or something that you want me to go into more detail on or revisit, just put it in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.